This is Full Ahead, the podcast about ships and shipping with Alistair and Nigel Thompson.
So welcome back to the Full Ahead podcast, and we are back on location in sunny Liverpool. We're in the shadow of the Liver building, the Liver birds up above us. Across the river we can see Camel Laird. It's pretty busy at the moment, isn't it? Yeah, lots going on the river, lots of ships buzzing back and forth, but we're here in Liverpool today to talk to people with jobs kind of around shipping, not directly on ships, but there are so many jobs and professions kind of around the shipping industry that maybe people don't know about, and maybe some names that you don't know about. So it's going to be an interesting day today, talking to people around the shipping industry. Yeah, the Full Ahead podcast very much about shining a light on people perhaps, and the kind of jobs that don't get recognised and don't get perhaps highlighted in the world of maritime. Yeah, and also some little bits of history. Just down the road from here is the offices of White Star Line, and I think we're going to hear a little bit more about that and some interesting snippets later on in this podcast.
The people and their stories. This is Full Ahead.
I mentioned across the river is the Camel Laird shipyard. I mean, you don't have to go very far before Bibbies is just down the road down there. You've got massive numbers of people involved in the maritime industry in Merseyside. And of course, a very big organisation which reflects and looks after that industry is led by Ruth Wood. I know you've known for a wee while. She's an early contributor to the podcast as well. We met her at the Liverpool John Moores University Innovation event. Yeah, Mersey Maritime is a great organisation, a kind of membership organisation specifically targeted on the maritime cluster and trying to support the jobs and the industry in the Liverpool city region. So, and a model that's been actually replicated all around the UK coast with lots of different maritime clusters. So it'd be great to catch up with Ruth on what I think is a pretty important week for her.
Yeah, so on Thursday we have our 11th annual awards. It's been something that's been a key milestone event for Mersey Maritime and is quite sort of well known across the whole of the maritime sector in the UK. For us, it's a great way to be able to shine a spotlight on the maritime excellence that we have here in the city region, the individuals, the companies, the innovations and initiatives that are taking place, and to really celebrate those successes and champion what we have here.
And it's not some kind of small event, this. So give us some idea of the scale, how many people are coming, where are you holding it? I've been myself many times, and it's a really impressive evening, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So they have absolutely grown over those 11 years. So expected sort of 450 people. It's taking place in Liverpool Cathedral. And for us, it is a celebration of the city region and the sector here, but we want to bring in people from outside of the region. So we quite often have national and international guests. And I think from my point of view, it's been able to showcase the very best of Liverpool. So to be able to do it in the cathedral, which is such a beautiful venue, I think if you're local or if you aren't, it's pretty spectacular. So yeah, set to be a great night. But yes, you're very much right. Last minute kind of preparations and work underway. So yeah, but really looking forward to the celebration.
I'm sure it's like a swan, isn't it? Underneath the water it's all mad, but on the top it's all serene and just gliding by. And I wonder as well, from events like this, I haven't been to an event like that, but I guess it kind of lives on the contacts that people make at the nice. You know, the awards are perhaps not so much the winners, but the ones who perhaps kind of form allegiances or just make friends, perhaps that kind of collaboration that goes on. Is that also the rest of the year that follows it is as important as perhaps the night itself?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, as I mentioned, we've just had our face-to-face breakfast event, providing those opportunities for industry and our members to come together on multiple different platforms is really, really important. Whether that be smaller scale events for up to 20 to 40 people, or in some cases more intimate events, to some of those larger scale ones. What I don't think we'd be able to do as a fairly small organisation is run those large-scale awards multiple times a year. Obviously, they take quite a lot of work and commitment to deliver. But yeah, providing those opportunities to bring people together, to network and to collaborate is absolutely a core mission of ours.
Also, from our point of view in the Full Ahead podcast, it's great to speak to a strong female voice in the maritime sector. I know from my own experience, it is still very much a kind of male-dominated sport in maritime, but it's great to see you kind of headlining and you standing up at the front of these events, and I know you'll be nervous and you'll be glad to get that bit of the evening over and done with. But how did you kind of end up doing what you're doing? Because I'm sure there are other young girls out there who are thinking about shipping maritime and wondering, did you fall into it? Was it always your kind of childhood wish, or how are you sat here today?
I absolutely fell into the sector, and I think there are quite often, two routes into maritime. One where it has been a lifelong ambition and you've had family members that have been within the industry and you had a clear understanding of the opportunities that were available, or those that fall into the sector. I absolutely was the latter. So I got an opportunity to work for Mersey Docks and Harbour Company, now Peel Ports, in 2009. And that was after moving into the area with my husband. And if I'm honest, I'd never anticipated a career in maritime. I wasn't quite sure whether I wanted a career in maritime for the first 6 months, because it was so different to anything I'd done before. I very quickly fell in love with the sector. The enormity of it, working at the port, being out on site was something that I absolutely loved. And I think you know all too well, Alistair, the people within the industry are phenomenal, quite varied in terms of all of the different characteristics and quirks. But I've worked now within the sector for coming up to 16 years. So was at Peel Ports for 9 years and then moved to Mersey Maritime and became the chief executive 2 years ago. I didn't anticipate becoming the chief executive, or perhaps being a leader within maritime, and it's something that I take really seriously. As a female, as you sort of mentioned, there aren't too many female leaders within the sector. That responsibility, I suppose, weighs heavy at times in terms of its privilege, but in terms of providing, being seen as a role model to other young females, and again, bringing that wider diversity, I think, more generally into the sector is something that I'm really passionate about. You come from a kind of marketing background then? You did a marketing degree, or you did marketing and communications degree. So I think, if I'm honest, I didn't know what I wanted to do when I grew up. I'm still not entirely sure. I've always been really curious about people, and relationships has always been something that I've been really, really motivated by, which is why I think working at Mersey Maritime and bringing people together has been something that I've really, really enjoyed. So we're an industry body, however, we can only be successful if we're bringing together government, whether that be local or central government, and equally academia. So that triple helix model is really, really important. And sometimes that obviously requires a significant level of diplomacy, because you're working with people with different agendas, and that could often be quite challenging. But again, I think it's really, really important to have that. And for Mersey Maritime's mission is about creating growth and opportunities within the sector, but for the benefit of the region as well. So we can't do that unless we're working closely with all of those stakeholders. And you mentioned this morning you're on the lookout for some more non-exec directors to join your kind of board and to help support the activities of Mersey Maritime. So if people are interested in that, they should get in contact with you. Yeah, absolutely. So we've just launched, we're actually looking for, at the moment, directors, but I think that will probably span into some non-executive directors as well for some further advisory groups. So again, we've been through quite a period of change over the last 2 years. We've looked at our governance, and we're going to be sort of sharing a new strategic direction within the new year, and having some new directors is an important part of that. So again, if you're passionate about the maritime sector within the Liverpool City region, please do get in touch with your expressions of interest.
I've got a question for you. We're sat on the 10th floor of the Plaza building, which people in Liverpool may know. You can see for miles, you can see right across the region. How hard is it to make sure that you actually reflect everything, the vast variety that goes on in a region like this?
That's a difficult question, and there's not, I think, one fixed answer, which makes it really, really hard as well. I think as an organisation, we've got to remain agile. We've got to change to the needs of the sector. And you're right, I think one of the key USPs of Liverpool as a maritime and a global port city is the variety of maritime businesses that operate here, and actually then the businesses that thrive off the maritime sector that you wouldn't necessarily traditionally say are part of maritime as well. So again, not one answer in terms of how we support those, but I think making sure that we have got those good networking opportunities, that we have got that reach, and that we're we're open to working with different people is really, really important. Key thing for me is if those larger organisations, those maritime organisations are thriving, that has a positive ripple effect on all of the supply chain, which is positive for the city region. So that's what we would always try to ensure is at the forefront of our minds.
And the fact you're still smiling, first of all, we have spoken before, but also you're obviously enjoying the job. Is that fair?
Yes, it's busy. There's always lots of challenges. I don't think there's ever a quiet week. This week is obviously one of the busier ones. But yeah, no, it's something that I'm really, really passionate about, and I appreciate I'm in a very, very fortunate position to be doing something that I enjoy and have influence over.
So you fell into it, but very much swimming and enjoy the ride at the moment. Good.
Yeah. No, thank you very much for your time. It's really interesting to talk to you again. And we're off now to interview someone else who's involved in the maritime sector in one of these glass buildings around us where you don't realise what goes on behind these panes of glass. So we'll go and find out that now, I think.
The people and their stories. This is Full Ahead, the podcast about ships and shipping.
So there we go. Ruth in fine form again. Good to hear from her.
Yeah, great to catch up, and I'll say it again, but it's nice to speak to a kind of inspirational female leader in the maritime industry, an industry that is dominated by blokes like me, unfortunately. So, no, it's great to speak to Ruth, and yeah, it's going to be a great evening for her at the event later this week, the award ceremony, and just great to see the work they continue to do to support maritime ships and shipping, not just locally, but also nationally now.
So we're on our way to our second guest today in Liverpool. If you're joining us, thank you very much for downloading this edition of the Full Ahead podcast. We're back on Merseyside for this one. As I said at the start, we're trying to shine a spotlight on people perhaps whose work is essential to the world of maritime, but maybe don't get the kind of recognition they deserve. And we're on our way to meet our second guest now, aren't we?
Yeah, and if you know Liverpool, we're just passing the kind of passport office. We're surrounded by glitzy glass buildings, and behind one of these doors, this one here, are the offices of Hill Dickinson. And we're off to speak to one of their partners, Colin Lavelle.
Hill Dickinson was formed in 1812, so quite a while, and it was on the back of an insurance and marine practice. So we have very long roots in the shipping industry, and especially here in Liverpool as well. So it was formed in Liverpool, but now we've got offices across the world. We've got a number of offices here in the UK. We've also got offices in Piraeus, Hong Kong, Monaco, Singapore, and Cyprus. So there's anywhere really where there's shipping activity, we tend to have a presence.
And I guess Hill Dickinson, if you're in shipping and law, it's a name I would have known and people would know, but for the general public knocking around the streets of Liverpool, Hill Dickinson may not be a name that people would be aware of. But in recent times there's been a bit of a change, because there's a large new football stadium just a few miles from this very spot with the Hill Dickinson name emblazoned in very large letters across it now. So you're the new stadium sponsor of Everton Football Club, I believe.
That's right. Very exciting. It's a nice flag for the firm, but also a really nice way to support a similarly sort of another business that has similar roots, long-standing roots in Liverpool. And although I'm pretty agnostic when it comes to football teams, I like to see local teams do well. So it's been very exciting times.
Are you a Tranmere fan?
Well, my dad is, but again, it's a local team, so I like to see it do well.
It's just that people normally sort of sit on the fence between Everton and Liverpool. They're over the water,
yes.
So you kind of just history kind of tells me, experience tells me that you're a bitter Tranmere fan.
It sounds like he's a lawyer, not committing to any particular thing. It's definitely a lawyer's answer, that. But
I must point out, Alistair, when I was in reception just a few minutes ago, there were two documents, two very ornate bound books, very historical. One's about the Lusitania,
yes,
and the other one actually is a reference to the Titanic. And you were
yes.
saying Hill's link to
yes.
maritime matters goes back way before certainly Everton Stadium, doesn't it? Right back to the inquiry into what happened to the Titanic.
Well, that's right. White Star Line was one of the clients of the firm. We did a lot of their work. Sir Norman Hill, as he was later known, was one of the family members of Hill Dickinson, and acted for White Star Line. He'd actually, as I'm told, worked on the bill contracts and for the various vessels across the fleet, and actually as a thank you was invited with his family to go on the maiden voyage of the Titanic. But being a lawyer, was too busy to be able to take that up, so turned it down. But as it turned out, luckily. but then ended up representing White Star Line in the subsequent inquests in the US and here in the UK. And similarly, with Lusitania, I was thinking of Lusitania as well. So they're the books of inquest that we have in reception.
Crikey, so he had a lucky escape then, basically. So it's good to work these long hours as a lawyer then, basically. No
Yes.
holidays and just keep going. But maritime law, so we'll come back to kind of what kind of roles you do, what kind of cases you deal with later. But we've just been speaking to Ruth Wood from Mersey Maritime, who fell into kind of shipping somehow. But I imagine with maritime law, it's what you've always wanted to do as a small child, and that's how you came into it. What's your background? Where did you come from? How did you end up doing what you're doing?
Well, I meet a lot of people who've fallen into maritime shipping law and or shipping, as an industry, and love it so much they don't leave it. And that's a bit like me as well, really, because my background is actually agricultural. We have a dairy farm on the Wirral, which is still a working dairy farm, and my parents were keen for me to go into the farm, so my degree was in agriculture at Nottingham. But during that degree, I realised it wasn't really something I wanted to do. It was really too solitary. And a friend of mine, as I graduated, who was doing his training contract in London, suggested I convert my degree to a law degree. So I spent a year on a conversion course at Chester College of Law, thinking I would use my agricultural and environmental background and go into agricultural and environmental law. I got a training contract at a firm just outside Chester, a nice little 4-partner firm in a converted farmhouse. And was happily doing minerals planning, road transport, logistics and environmental work there as I qualified. And then when I qualified, the firm was dissolving and I was out looking for a job as a newly qualified lawyer. And Hill Dickinson were looking for a newly qualified lawyer to join their mercantile team at the time, which was shipping, banking, property, commercial. Somebody with environmental experience to help them on a big class action case that they had at the time. So I joined the firm then and helped them with that case, but also gradually did more and more shipping maritime work. And as I was doing that, the mercantile team was splitting up into specific banking, commercial property teams, and I always remained in the element that the marine work. So my background back in 2000 goes back to 2002, and so I've been doing this for 23 years, and I can honestly say it's much more interesting than any of those other areas that the mercantile team was split up into.
Why interesting? I mean, banking sounds pretty dull, I get that, but why is shipping interesting?
I think it's fascinating for a number of reasons. I think the clients we have are much more, or shipping clients are much more commercial and down to earth, much more pragmatic, less airs and graces, less ego-driven, and I think the sector reflects that because it's a very practical, can-do sector, and the jobs that I would sort of be required to do, or the experiences I was getting and still get, involve getting out from behind the desk onto ships, interviewing people at ports, really getting around and getting under the skin of the industry, and in a sense, it gives me a sense of contributing to that sector and helping it to grow and develop and to get over issues and to try to resolve disputes where there are disputes and that sort of thing, really. So issues we get asked to advise on range from, sadly, where there's casualties on vessels, or vessels are colliding with a terminal infrastructure, or it can be sort of high net worth individuals who have lent their bespoke barges to friends who then won't get off the barge after a number of years, and they ask us questions. Well, is that squatting? You know, do they have squatters' rights?
Maritime squatting.
Yes.
Yeah.
So and there's a whole range of sort of wonderful and varied sort of questions that come up in maritime and shipping, aside from the usual logistics and commercial hardcore sort of work. But even the commercial stuff is really, really interesting, and trying to sort of close gaps between parties where there's a dispute or there's an issue is really, really rewarding, I find.
And I guess it's quite an international business. You end up dealing with clients that aren't just based in the local area, but you deal with clients from all around the world, and you have offices all around the world that help with that process. You're part of a bigger team.
That's right. And so there's international clients, a whole range of sort of clients who would come to us with different expectations, requirements, but also dealing with other jurisdictions. So we've been dealing with arrests in Oman recently, ship arrests, I should say.
Sorry, to stop you there. People who are uninitiated in such matters, why would you arrest a ship?
So ship arrests can be quite exciting, but they are a means by which a party who has provided services, particular particular services to a vessel and aren't being paid, can in certain jurisdictions arrest the vessel, essentially take the vessel as security. But it makes jurisdictional issues more interesting. So, for instance, you could have contracted with an entity based in Asia when the ship called at your port, and then the ship sails away, and you're struggling to recover that sum or to be paid. So instead of having to go to that country in Asia where you would try to enforce and may not know what to do, next time the ship comes into port, subject to specific conditions and requirements, you could simply bring a claim against the vessel itself. So it seizes jurisdiction in your area, and the ship can't go anywhere until the arrest is lifted. So that's essentially what you're doing. The term arrest, if you think of a big pair of handcuffs, sticking them on the ship, stopping it from going anywhere, it's that, in principle, that's the idea.
So is it true that the guilty party, you can't escape it by just sailing off? Your chances wherever you go to, with restrictions,
yes,
it can follow you.
That's yes. There are only certain jurisdictions that allow ship arrest. But for instance, if in that scenario, if the ship then called at South Africa allows an arrest jurisdiction, so we can instruct lawyers there. But it might be that in its home port in Asia, you may not be able to arrest there, but it doesn't stop you from arresting elsewhere. And that's subject to the owner, still, at least under English law, the owner of the ship who owes you the money, still being the owner of the ship when you arrest the vessel. But that sort of thing, an instruction can come in the morning, and you need to have arrested the vessel before she finishes discharging that afternoon, and it could be quite urgent. We had one case that was interesting. We had it was a Turkish shipyard, and it was their lawyers who contacted us to say that they had a debt from a Greek ship owner, and they'd been chasing this debt. They'd allowed the ship to go. They carried out maybe £200,000 or £300,000 worth of work on the vessel. The vessel had sailed with the promises, and after 18 months of chasing them, the ship owners eventually said, you can whistle for it, we're not going to do it. And so the lawyers phoned me, and they said, we understand the ship's coming into UK waters, is there anything you can do about it? So I had a look, saw where she was coming into the Mersey as it happened, and I said, yes, talked them through arrest process and the costs and the time and that sort of thing. I said, but let me just check. Anyway, I followed her progress as she came into the Mersey, and I noticed that she was stopping in the middle of the river, and I came up here and looked out the window, and she was turning and heading into the Birkenhead docks. And as she went in, I saw the lock gates close, and I went back down to the client and I said, we'll send a letter to the ship owner and say, here's a photo of your ship going into the lock. She won't be coming out now till 4 o'clock in the morning, the next high tide. If you haven't paid us by 2 p.m, we will be arresting her at 2:30, and she won't be going anywhere. And the money came in and hit the account, and it was brilliant.
It's great, you can do something on your email, then look out the window and see it happening real time. That's fantastic. I mean, it must be, I don't know, maybe depressing is the wrong word, but every time one of your clients phones you, something somewhere has gone wrong, or something bad has happened, or there's been some issue. Nobody's ever phoned you to say, just to let you know, Colin, everything's going great and I just wanted to say hi. It's always a problem. Does that not get a bit wearing? How do you keep smiling?
I couldn't do this job if I didn't think I was helping. And I think it's you can imagine the emergency services getting a call. They are responding because they want to try to help and make it better. And in some ways, I sometimes refer to our team as a bit of a Thunderbirds team. We get the people with the right expertise in to do it, to fix something that's gone wrong. And so if I didn't think my intervention was curtailing the issue or resolving the issue in some way, I couldn't do this, I don't think. And that's where I find this job is quite rewarding, because there's an issue, clients need support, they need help, they need advice, guidance, and we need to try to work out where we want to be at the end of this, and then try to make it happen and try and make it.
So you're making a difference, effectively. That's the positive outcome. Yeah.
That's what I like to think.
Yeah. I suppose as well, because you go to sea, you actually see the people who are being affected by. You see the crew.
Yes.
You see the owner or whoever, so it becomes real. Whereas I guess colleagues in other branches of law may never see the people they're talking about.
No. And for a short stint, I did a bit of insurance law, and that was personally, I found that far less rewarding, because it was all about fees, it was all about turning things around as quickly and as cheaply as possible, and you could get a great result, but not a lot of satisfaction or gratitude, because it had cost more than they wanted it to spend. Whereas in maritime and shipping, you're sort of helping deliver a solution or a result that is helping the client, and that's that's kind of what drives me.
Going back to kind of your early years in farming and your family farm, dairy farming, I imagine your parents, dairy farmers, want their young, good-looking son to be the next dairy farmer, and you're not doing that. How are they with you kind of not being in the farm directly? Is that tough for them? Because as farmers, I just think it naturally kind of hands down. But
Mum and Dad have been very supportive, really, because when I graduated, I was lucky enough to graduate at a time when we didn't have to pay university tuition fees. But when I was doing the conversion course and then the LPC, which I needed to do then, I certainly needed support with the fees and what have you. So they were very supportive of that. And I think they were, I'd like to think, they're proud of where I've, got to or how I've done. I think they probably are disappointed that, to a certain extent, that we're not involved in the farm, but we still live on the farm. For many years I was still feeding the calves and calving the cows and milking them, and at one point I had to say to Dad, I'm going to have to give up bringing the cows in the morning and milking them and feeding the calves because I've got a job to do. And they said, all right, then we'll maybe just do the weekends then. And so he didn't really want to let go. So that was a bit of a wrestle, but it's worked out well. And I think that's possibly where I quite like having that practical impact on businesses, and shipping and maritime is very much that kind of hands-on industry. Parties to disputes, generally speaking, are pragmatic. The insurers, the clubs that we act for, are pragmatic when it comes to dispute. It's not really in anyone's interests for the lawyers to be making all the money on big 14-year long claims or what have you. It's about trying to get back to business. And also, the other commercial factor is that it's a limited pool of customers that clients have. So in the maritime market, you don't want to be falling out with your customers. It's not good for business. So that's all part of that pragmatism that I really enjoy. But I think looking back, for me, sort of coming from an agricultural background and having that sort of expectation that that's what I'd be going into, not really wanting to, I was never really sure as to what I wanted to do. And it was probably about 10 years ago that I suddenly thought, I'm here, I'm kind of doing what I want to do. And I didn't even, I would never have been able to work out this is what I wanted to do then. But if I had, there are other routes. And now there's even more routes that are for getting into law. So besides sort of, we run apprenticeships. We're one of the first firms to offer apprenticeships in conjunction with the College of Law, or University of Law as it is now, I think, and with other providers where you can do an SQE or you can do ILEX still. There's a whole range of routes. And I know when I was doing my A-levels and we had our careers advisor and saying, well, you must go to university and you must do this, and these are all the traditional routes for medicine, dentistry, law, all the rest of it. Now there's so many routes and options into work. And into maritime particularly. So, maritime law, anybody who wanted experience in maritime, I would go and get some experience wherever you can, because it's, finding your route can sometimes be a bit difficult, a bit tricky, but getting the experience will help sort of inform you. My route wasn't through the traditional route. So my training contract was at a smaller 3-partner firm, which was kind of really what I wanted to be. Partly because of after my 180 odd applications that had come back with either no response or no thank yous, I thought, well, I need to find a way that this is going to work for me. And so I think one of the things I learned about myself is my resilience. And I think I speak to a lot of paralegals who are 4 or 5 years into applying for training contracts, not getting anywhere, who are tempted to give up. And I always think, well, if you want it, go for it, but you just need to be resilient and think of other ways to skin the cat. So I joined a small firm where they had less applications, and so try to just help yourself in terms of the way things might work out, or go for the easier opportunities if you like.
Fascinating, too. A little insight into well, not big insight into your world as well, which is clearly growing. And you said at the start of the conversation about still learning. I mean, I guess that's the thing, isn't it? That I don't know what you're doing this afternoon, but I imagine it's going to be interesting, and it might involve arresting a ship or who knows. But I guess that's the thing that keeps you going, is that you're constantly learning in an industry that's constantly changing.
Yes, that's right. I mean, we had one occasion where we had to arrest a fleet of ships in different ports. Wow. And you have to, and that does happen. We had recently this year, we had 2 ships in 2 different ports. But when you're arresting multiple ships, you need to arrest them all at the same time. Otherwise, if you arrest one, you look round to arrest the others, and they've gone because they realise that there's a creditor here coming for them. So there's that sort of thing you have to coordinate as well. So we had 2 ships in Spain, we had 3 ships around the UK, different ports. We had to seize them all at once. But that sort of thing it comes in and it's quite urgent, and you need to deal with it there and then as well. So, I mean, my wife's always sending me links to news articles of things just happened, to say, oh, have you seen this? And quite often we've already been instructed on it. So most of the things you see happening on the news, somewhere in the business we're already acting for one of the parties, because that's one of the other things. There's so many parties involved in a single ship, whether it's the insurers or the owner, the charterer, the head owner, the cargo interest or cargo interests, and their insurers. There's so many parties involved, and we have to be very careful about our conflicts to make sure we're not accepting two counter instructions on the same issue. So we do have to be a bit careful.
Wow. So you haven't lost any kind of clients that were staunch Liverpool supporters. Now you're kind of sponsoring the Everton Stadium. That hasn't caused any ructions with any clients, no?
No, it's not. No, I think they're keen to try to get tickets if they can to those games. So no, it's good.
Well, it's great to talk to you, and I think people will know a bit more about maritime law, a bit more about who Hill Dickinson are and the history.
Well, yeah, I've got to say, I've learned so much. I'm still blown away by the fact that in the reception area, not far from where we're sat, to two very historic documents which link very much back to your firm. Do you think about that when you see them? This place has real history, doesn't it?
It's interesting because you might think the Titanic happened a long time ago, but I was instructed on a case in relation to the Titanic that about 7 years ago, when the insurers, who were clients of ours, got in touch to say when the wreck had been found by the American company that had spent quite a bit trying to find her, and they were starting to bring up artifacts, and the insurer got in touch and said, who owns these now? Didn't we pay for these? So we had to look into that, and we gave them some advice, and then the whole thing went quiet. So
you just don't realise what goes on, behind closed doors, behind these kind of glass windows that we saw from outside. It's just a hive of activity, bizarre and interesting kind of cases. And much as though it might be a bit depressing at times, it sounds really interesting, and clearly you are making a difference. So well done, and you are smiling. So on a rainy day in Liverpool. So, thank you, Colin, for your time. It's been really interesting talking to you.
Thank you both as well, and hope this is of interest.
Well, Colin there was a real inspiration, talking about law and his career, and also somebody else like Ruth Wood, who we heard earlier, who kind of fell into this kind of job. Amazing. Yeah, they both kind of fell into it in different ways, didn't they? But I think we avoided the rabbit holes of too much maritime law kind of terminology, but we definitely heard a bit about that. But Colin's a great guy, Ruth's fantastic, and just interesting to speak to people around shipping, as we said at the start. It's not all about driving and ships and unloading ships, it's also all the jobs, ancillary jobs around it, and probably far more jobs around shipping than in shipping directly, and lots of opportunities and careers for young people in this industry. I must say, by the way, thank you very much to the people who keep commenting on our LinkedIn profile. If you're on LinkedIn, look out for the Full Ahead podcast. We're also on Facebook as well, and we really do appreciate the comments. In fact, we've met people today who listen to the podcast. It's always nice to meet a listener, isn't it? Yeah, and just to be clear, they are not fake seagulls. They've just flown overhead. We haven't edited them in. That is a real seagull sound. But there are so many people, and every time we meet people, we find someone else interesting to talk to. And going forward, we're going to be doing a bit of a longer trip, heading to a different country and going to an event that's going to give a whole different slant and meet some interesting people from different nations to hear about what they're doing. Alistair, as always, it's been a joy. I'm learning so much in this series. I don't know about you, but every time I sort of meet people, or people get in touch to say we'd like to be a contributor, I'm learning so much, and I hope as a listener you are too. Yeah, and thank you for listening. It means so much to hear your comments. It's great to see the audience grown so quickly and in so many different countries, and we'll keep delivering some quality content, hopefully. And please keep listening and share it with your friends and tell people about the Full Ahead podcast. And in the meantime, better go and find that passport. Indeed. Here we go. Go and pack that suitcase. Thanks for listening. Cheers, Alistair. Bye-bye. Cheers, Nigel.